I'm John Heilman.
And I'm Mark Halperin.
And I'm Donald Trump. And with all due respect to the campaign trail, this is thick ice.
Zamboni is what they call that thing. Happy National LP Day, sports fans, and I am not talking about vintage vinyl. I am talking about us. Henceforth, this show will be a long-playing production on every day at this time for 60 instead of the customary 30 minutes. That's right, for the full hour. Luckily for us and for you, we have the Donald, the J, the Trump to help us kick off the new and improved version of the show. We'll have our extended interview with him at his favorite ice skating rink in New York City in just a minute. But first, it was the summer of Trump, and it looked like it might have been the autumn of Ben Carson. But is it, in fact, Marco Rubio's season in the sun? Coming out of last week's debate in Boulder, Rubio is raising money and racking up endorsements, including one today from freshman Colorado Senator Cory Gardner. Rubio's support has spiked in New Hampshire, where a new Monmouth University poll shows him up 9 points since September. He's now in third place, according to Monmouth, with 13%. This weekend at a party cattle call in Iowa, no one had more buzz than Rubio. But one person who is not impressed is, surprise, surprise, the aforementioned Mr. Trump. Here is what the Donald told us earlier.
I think he's an overrated person. I don't think he's going to make it. I noticed that the press, in fact, I was watching this morning one of the shows, and they were talking about Marco Rubio. I mean, he's nowhere in the polls. I don't think he's going to make it. You know, I called him a lightweight. I said at one point he was a lightweight. And I don't mean to be insulting, but I do describe people somehow well.
Mark, as you know, we were going to show a lot more of that interview with Donald Trump later in the show. But for right now, my question for you is, how real is Marco Rubio's rise?
Marco Rubio can survive the vetting that's coming. He is going to be a finalist in this contest. He has the establishment, people who aren't wedded to Bush, the establishment's moving towards him, and he is a great retail campaigner. I saw it in Iowa more clearly this weekend than I ever had. He's great with people, and he is right now on everybody's list as a possible nominee.
Well, and look, I mean, you can't make too much out of any endorsements, right? But in the last 96 hours, Paul Singer, really important Republican bundler, as important as anybody in the world of Republican donors, sided with Rubio, deciding that Jeb, after the debate, could never be the guy. And then Cory Gardner today, an important freshman senator, but a new voice in the party. Those are big bolsters for Rubio headed forward.
As far as we know, Jeb Bush hasn't lost a single bundler.
Right.
As far as we know, Marco Rubio has not skyrocketed. He's done what sort of Carly Fiorina did after her good debate. He's got to keep it going, and he's got to start opening some campaign offices or building infrastructure in places in a new modern way.
Right. Yeah. I mean, look, there's still the question we keep raising again and again: what state does Rubio win early on? But if he keeps this rise up that he's starting to see, this one Monmouth poll, it's all we have to go on right now. But if that's indicative of everything else, of other polls that are to come, he could be in a good place.
Singer and Gardner show there's a new force in the party for sure. If you follow politics, you know that every candidate is legally allowed to reboot their campaign 96 times. Today, Jeb Bush executed his 24th reboot. That leaves him 72 more. Included in today's repackaging is the release of an e-book about his emails as governor and a speech in Tampa where Jeb took new aim at President Obama and Hillary Clinton while making what we saw as his strongest and boldest argument yet for why his record as Florida governor should matter more than what is sometimes a poor performance on the campaign trail.
If you watched the debate, you probably came away thinking that the election's about sound bites. Yeah. Or fantasy football. Yeah. Or which candidate can interrupt the loudest. Yeah. I'm here to tell you it is not. This election is not about a set of personalities. It's about a set of principles. The challenges we face as a nation are too great to roll the dice on another presidential experiment, to trust the rhetoric of reform over a record of reform. After 7 years of incompetence, corruption, and gridlock in Washington, we need a president who can fix it.
That was a fired-up Jeb Bush today on Saturday in Iowa. Here's what he told me about his resilience in this race. Some people don't think you know how to fight.
Man, they don't know me. They don't know me.
Could you sign this to Luke?
I eat nails when I wake up, and then I have breakfast.
She said you got to earn this like everybody else.
Yeah.
Is that still how you feel about it, I assume?
Yeah. I think the standards have been higher for me because of just my family background, and I don't mind it a bit.
Jeb's new phrase is, Jeb can fix it, John, our perennial question we've been asking, we'll continue to ask, will this refocused message and its Mr. Fix-It slogan cure what ails Jeb Bush?
Well, first I'd like to comment on the eating of nails, a whole different take on the paleo diet, apparently. That'll keep him slim. Look, he needs to find... he needs some good news, and he needs a message that is comprehensible to people. One of the things that he had started out to think he was going to run on was the Florida record. He still is talking about that. But right now, I think most voters in the Republican Party, from what we can tell, do not know what Jeb Bush is all about. And if they don't know that, they're never going to come his way, no matter how many times he reboots.
Three of the four establishment candidates now who have the best chance, Christie, Kasich, Bush, are all talking about being governors with records who can accomplish stuff. Yep. Two of them are current governors. Bush's biggest challenge to me is to convince people that his experience is relevant to the current age. And I think he's starting to edge that way. And I think attacking Obama and Clinton in a Republican nomination fight right now for him is a lot smarter than attacking Trump and Rubio.
Well, yes, there's no doubt I agree with you about that. But I have to say, one of the things that we said before he got in this race was how his absence from politics for a long time, how that affected him. It has affected him both in terms of performance, but it also affects him in terms of making the argument. Because that time in Florida seems a long time ago to a lot of people.
He's eating some rusty nails.
Okay, ooh, rusty nails, okay. If you like debates, you are going to love this topic because it is a debate about debates. And while we've never met a meta we didn't love, it's possible that the movie version of this topic will require the services of Christopher Nolan. This week began with uncertainty about what's going to happen with the Republican presidential debates as the RNC tries to quash a revolt from its grumpy field of candidates. Roughly a dozen campaigns met on Sunday in Virginia to draft new demands for television networks and their moderators. And the Washington Post is reporting that Donald Trump will negotiate his own rules with TV executives separately. Mark, my question for you at this moment is, will these Republican campaigns get what they want?
The most likely to get what they want are Trump and Carson, particularly Trump, because Trump knows full well they can't do the shoe without him. So if he wants something, he's probably going to have a lot of leverage to get it.
As he showed with CNBC.
That's right.
Where he got what he wanted.
Yeah.
Look, I think one of the problems is that there's no consensus among all these candidates. They all want the temperature in the hall to be 67 degrees or lower. Nobody wants to sweat.
Most of them want opening statements.
But some of them, Ted Cruz has said he wants moderators only that have voted in Republican primaries. Donald Trump, Chris Christie don't think that's at all legitimate or fair. I think it's always hurting cats on debates among multi-candidate
Which is why
fields.
having the party do it makes sense to a lot of people.
Yes.
Now that the thing's wide open, I don't really know where it's going to go. But I do know, whatever the final solution is, Trump and Carson are going to have a lot of influence, a lot of say on what happens.
And the other big question, of course, is how much the networks are going to, various outlets are going to push back. We don't know that yet.
All right, up next, our extended conversation with Donald Trump. More of what he said about Marco Rubio, the situation in Syria, his Saturday Night Live host ship this weekend, and a 30-year-old success story that some say demonstrate why he should be president. Plus, what the other Republican candidates did in Iowa over Halloween when we come back in just 60 seconds.
We think our message is attractive to independents. They're allowed to vote here. And we also think our message is attractive to the liberty part, the liberty wing of the Republican Party. We think it's enough to win. I don't know what to tell you how many votes we'll get, but we think it's enough to win, and that is our plan, is to win.
I go around Iowa, and I'm Johnny Appleseed, and I'm just planting seeds and reminding people why they supported me last time, reminding them that they actually did a good job, that they should trust their judgment, that the person that I was selected could have won.
We need to have a primary process where we have our say, respect everybody involved, give them more time, and challenge each other.
Those were three of the many Republican candidates I got to speak to over the weekend in Des Moines, Iowa. You can watch my full interviews with Rand Paul, Rick Santorum, and Lindsey Graham. They're all posted right now on BloombergPolitics.com. Another candidate who was in Iowa who we talked to was Ted Cruz. His super PAC and his campaign are reportedly planning to flesh out his personal story, the bio, as it's called in the political dodge, sometime in the near future. On Saturday, I caught up with the senator and his father, Raphael, and we talked about something that could not be more personal, family. How do you all spend the holidays?
Well, actually, we normally spend Thanksgiving and Christmas together, the whole family. It's a time of reflection. Thanksgiving especially is a time for us to give thanks to God for the great blessings we enjoy, for the wonderful country in which we live. And it is a time that we go around the table, everyone saying, what are you most thankful for? What is it that you want to express thanksgiving to God? And it is a wonderful time of really communion around the dinner table.
And I'll say one of the fun things also is my dad, for every Thanksgiving and Christmas, will cook his famous flan. Now you may think you've had flan, but my father's flan, number one, is about 6 inches tall, and the bottom inch of it is shredded coconut. And it is obscene. It is so good. He cooks it every Christmas, and then we sit around the table and play dominoes. We have Cuban dominoes games are pretty intense, and we have sort of a rotating dominoes game where usually my dad and I and my aunt, my Tia Sonia, are three of the regulars, and the fourth switches out pretty regularly, but they're pretty cutthroat dominoes games.
Is he exaggerating the amount of shredded coconut? It's really that thick.
Oh, I put a lot of shredded coconut in it. About a third of the flying is shredded coconut.
Is that you shred that, or you buy it shredded?
No, I buy it shredded.
Not shredded by hand.
No.
And last question about the holidays. You all have spent a lot of special holidays together. What's this year going to be like, given all that's going on?
Well, I think we still take time to reflect on the birth of Christ and why Christ came to earth to die for our sins. It is a very sacred time. The only thing that Ted didn't like about Christmas is, Ted was born on December 22nd. And then several people in the family, my sister was notorious for this. She would come to Ted and she'd say, "This present is for your birthday and for Christmas." And Ted, when he was a little kid, he always would say, "Dad, why wasn't I born in July?" And he always felt chided for that.
I don't blame him. Senator Cruz and Mr. Cruz, thank you both. Happy holidays.
God bless you. Same to you.
Thank you.
So I will say we're also hardcore movie buffs, so I'm pretty sure this Christmas will entail watching the new Star Wars movie. I'm looking forward to that.
So, John, Ted Cruz has been mostly an ideological candidate in the eyes of the national media. He is on the ground talking to people about his personal story. Is more of that helpful? Is the personal narrative important to him?
Well, it's a double-edged sword for him. Look, he is a guy who is seen even by people who admire him for his intelligence and his conservative bona fides as being a little severe and a little unapproachable. And so to the extent that he can soften himself and be more inviting, that's obviously a good thing. His father is a very controversial figure, very, very, very far-right evangelical pastor who has said some incredibly inflammatory things about the president and other things. So in a Republican primary, probably not a big problem. But elevating his father carries real risks for him down the road if he's the nominee.
Let's be honest, a lot of elites in the media, a lot of Republican elites who worked in the Bush campaign with Ted Cruz as a staffer, they think he's like a nasty, arrogant, unfun guy. The fact is, his friends like him, his family likes him, and he's going to have to show people, he's going to be president, if he's going to win the nomination, he's going to have to show people his personality more. And I thought in that interview, and I think in some of these upcoming ads, you'll see more personality.
There's no doubt he has a personality, and there's no doubt he has a sense of humor. When we saw him out in Iowa, he was, he's very congenial, can be very congenial, but it's also true what you just said. People who were his allies, including his former boss, George W. Bush, who, semi-publicly took him to the woodshed as being a guy who just kind of bugs him. That's not unusual in a lot of places that Ted Cruz has spent time, and so he's going to have to counteract that, too, within the party, I think.
He's working really hard, and we're seeing progress by him in Iowa. We'll see if he can mix personality in with hard work.
All right. There is another guy who is trying to beef up his personal narrative, and that's Bernie Sanders. Check out this ad, the first of the campaign from his campaign, which will begin running in Iowa and New Hampshire tomorrow.
The son of a Polish immigrant who grew up in a Brooklyn tenement. He went to public schools, then college, where the work of his life began, fighting injustice and inequality, speaking truth to power. He moved to Vermont, won election and praise as one of America's best mayors. Bernie Sanders, husband, father, grandfather, an honest leader, building a movement with you to give us a future to believe in.
Mark, the Sanders campaign says it's going to back up that ad with $2 million on the air. They have plenty of money. They're going to be ramping up their advertising to Hillary Clinton level as we get closer and closer to the Iowa caucuses. My question for you is the same question as with Ted Cruz. How much does the human Bernie matter to Sanders' success?
It's totally vital because he's got a more winning personality than lets on. When he's with us, he shows that. I think that's one of the best One of the best ads I've seen this cycle, and maybe in several cycles. It's a 60-second spot. Great narration, really well-chosen photographs, tells the story, and does the thing that so few candidates do. It links his personal biography with what he cares about, his agenda.
Yes, I mean, and that's the key thing, right? The key thing is, as Barack Obama showed back in 2008, how do you tell a story that not just is like all the personal details, but how does your biography marry up to your theory of the case, to the themes of your campaign? Sanders has a very credible merger of those two things that can be brought together. He just has to allow his campaign to do it. He's so reticent about that background. Yeah. He's got to let them do their jobs.
Paid media in presidential politics matters, but earned media, free media matters more. Yes. I'll be fascinated to see if they can get him to pick up any of these themes, any of these stories, and just slide them into the stump speech, even just a little bit.
There's no humanity in his stump speech at all, no humor, none of those things that we know.
There's a little humor.
A little bit, but not a lot. It's like
it's not humor connected
Democratic
to his life.
Socialist humor.
Yeah.
He's a guy who he's got to let go a little bit and let that stuff out, because you can't win just by being an ideological avatar.
If that ad doesn't move his numbers, his campaign should reconsider whether they should buy any ads, because if that ad can't move numbers, I don't know what can. It's very strong. Yeah. Very, very strong. All right, when we come back, the real Donald Trump talks debates, breakfast bacon, and the ice rink some believe says a lot about his candidacy after this. This morning we spent some time with the real Donald Trump at Woman Rink in Central Park here in Gotham City. We let him reminisce about his accomplishment with that project in the 1980s. We'll have more on that later. But first, we asked Trump about politics and a tax issue about which we knew he'd have a lot to say: corporate inversions.
Corporate inversions, right? You've said this is a serious problem.
A tremendous problem.
Okay, so you've also argued that bankruptcy laws, you've taken advantage of the bankruptcy laws.
I have.
Corporations have done that. It's within the law.
Many people.
You take advantage. How are inversions different from taking advantage of the bankruptcy laws?
Well,
this is legal.
Right.
This is companies trying to benefit their shareholders. How is it different?
Much different in this way. You can stop it so easily. There's $2.5 trillion out there. At least it could be 4, it could be 5, but $2.5 trillion that they know of. This is money that wants to come back to this country. The corporations want to bring back. They can't bring it back in because of the tax laws. They're so prohibitive, so bad, and so complicated. So they can't bring it. So now what's happening is companies are leaving our country, and you're reading about it. You're seeing Pfizer, you're seeing they're leaving our country and thinking about, massive numbers of companies are thinking about leaving to go out and get that money. Also to get a better tax deal. So that's a lot different.
So when you're saying it's a serious problem, what you're saying is the law is the problem, not the company's behavior. It's not bad what Pfizer is doing.
No, and there's no way you can stop it really other than lowering the taxes, because right now, John, it's prohibitive to bring that money in. They'd have to pay so much, it'd have to be fools to bring it in. But under my plan, and a couple of others, but nobody even knew about corporate inversion until I brought it. I mean, these other candidates, they don't even know what corporate inversion is. I do know. I really know. You're going to lose hundreds of thousands of jobs to other countries because of corporate inversions. What you're going to do is you're going to lower the taxes, bring the money in, and they're going to use that money to build and do things in the United States.
Again, so you're not criticizing Pfizer at all?
No,
or companies like that. It's just about the law.
You got to be. Look. In the old days, you'd leave New York and go down to Florida.
Right.
Or you'd leave New Jersey and go to Texas to save taxes. Now, because of the way the world is so different, you leave the United States and you go to Ireland, and you go to different places in Asia, and you go to Europe. I mean, it's a different world, and we have to compete better.
Okay. This is a great New York institution.
It is.
So is Saturday Night Live. You're doing it this week.
Right.
Nervous, excited. How do you feel about it?
Well, I did it like 11 years ago. Yeah. The Apprentice became #1, and they asked me to do it. And I'm just excited about it. I think it's great. We're going to meet with Lorne Michaels today. They're going to come up with some skits, and it's going to be very exciting.
I gave you an idea. Pretty good one, right? You going to try that?
That's a good one.
Think about it.
I'll think about it.
I don't want a royalty, but
I'll think about it.
So this rink, right, it was once the largest ice rink in the world.
Right.
Now, there's a lot of rinks bigger than this. Obviously, that was back in the 50s.
Well, we have more people. Oh, yeah, they have massive rinks.
Right.
Well, they have lakes, in all fairness. Yeah. But we have more people than any other ice rink by far in the world.
Wait, do you skate yourself?
I don't.
Well, what do you do for exercise if it's not ice skating?
Don't ask me. I run for office. This is what I needed.
Play golf.
Seriously? No,
I play golf. I play tennis. I love sports. I don't have much time for exercising, but I do love sports. I've always loved sports.
Here's a question I've been wanting to ask you for a while. We almost never get to see you eat. What do you like to eat? What's like Donald Trump's favorite stuff?
I love to eat the food we have in here.
Really? Like what do they have
I love steak and hamburger and pasta and French fries. All the things we shouldn't be eating is what I love.
You're going to need to do some more exercise.
I know. I think
are you like a normal eater, like 3 meals a day?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. I try.
And
a lot of times I can't because I'm pretty
What's
busy.
the food you like that you know you shouldn't eat but you just can't resist?
Bacon, eggs, steak. I don't know. I hear good and bad. I hear good things. Sometimes they'll come out with a report, steak is great. Then they come out with a report, so you don't know what you're doing. So the bottom line, they don't know what they're doing. So I eat what I like. But it's been, it's been working.
How many pieces of bacon would you eat normally in one sitting?
Don't ask.
Don't ask.
Too many.
More than 2.
Too many.
New York's team, the New York Mets, last night lost the World Series to the Kansas City Royals. Is that because the Kansas City Royals are great or because the Mets kind of blew it?
Well, they blew it a little bit, but they really turned out to be a great team, Kansas City. And the Mets had a wonderful season. They've come so far, and they should be proud of themselves. I think Kansas City really had a great winning team. They always seem, and they said during the whole season, they'd come back. I love these comeback people. They would come back. They'd be losing a game in the 9th inning. I think they practically set a record for comebacks. There's something special about that. They came back on a number of occasions against the Mets, but the Mets had a great season.
You've got a son, you've got grandkids. What do you do to make them laugh?
Well, I spend as much time as I can with them. The time has been, it was tight before, now this is ridiculous, although more and more I'm giving management over to my children and my executives of the company. But I do nothing to make them laugh. I just love them.
Yeah, you don't, no funny faces?
A little bit, probably. I don't think I want to do it on this one, but a little bit.
Come on, give us just a little bit.
Bernie Sanders does a monster imitation for his grandkids.
Bernie Sanders, he blew it. Bernie Sanders blew it. You know what? He blew it with emails. When he gave that up, I said, great soundbite. That's the end of him. That's the end of him. By the way, not getting the crowds anymore. It's over. When he gave up the emails, which he shouldn't have given up, I said, great soundbite, he's dead. And he's dead.
This rink, right? You were talking before in extraordinary detail about how the ice gets made, the Freon versus this and that. Have you ever driven the Zamboni?
I have, one time.
Really? What was that like?
It's great.
What are the things you've achieved since your father passed away do you think you'd be really proud of?
Well, he was a spectacular guy. He was a wonderful builder and a wonderful person, had a great heart. We talk about heart. But he was a very good negotiator, and I learned a lot. And he gave me a loan when I said, Dad, I want to go out to Manhattan. He said, no, you don't know anything about that. Let's stay in Brooklyn and Queens. I said, no, I want to go out to Manhattan. When I was very young. And I came to Manhattan, I did really well right from the beginning. And it was just, he was just somebody that was very special.
What do you think he'd think about you running for president?
Yeah.
I think he would say, amazing, and go do it. He came up with a statement. He was a very tough cookie. But he came up with a statement because when I worked for him, I did great stuff. And I had great success even working for him and brought it to a very high level. And he said to one of the big business magazines, everything he touches turns to gold. And I said, and that statement's followed me, because this was not a father that would normally say that. This was a very tough cookie. Not easy, but terrific, a terrific guy. But he said that, he made that statement, and I was probably the greatest compliment I have ever had. But he said everything he touches turns to gold. So let's see what happened.
Was he a political
guy?
He
was political, but different kind of political. He was political to get a building permit, political to be able to build a house or a building in Brooklyn or Queens.
There's nothing more political than that.
That's pretty political.
That was The Personal with Donald Trump. Up next, we'll talk about politics and policy and his block of ice. More from our conversation with Donald Trump at Woolman Rink when we come back.
Back in the old days, and by that I mean last week, this would be time when we'd be saying sayonara. But no longer. We are 60 minutes long from now on. It's like the venerable CBS News program 60 Minutes, but without any of that annoying ticking sound. Anyway, our conversation with Donald Trump today took place at the Woolman Ice Rink in Central Park here in Gotham City. It is a place very close to Trump's heart because about 3 decades ago, he took it from the dumps and gave it that special Trumpian magic touch. Central Park's iconic Woolman Ice Rink is as much a part of New York City's mad holiday season as the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree, the window displays at Barney's and Saks, and endless reruns of Elf on cable. When the Woolman Rink opened in 1950, it was a marvel, hosting 300,000 skaters in its first year alone. But like much of Gotham City over the decades that followed, the Woolman Rink descended into disrepair. In 1980, it was shut down, slated for a nearly $5 million overhaul, but then the project stalled. 6 years later, the rink had yet to reopen and was $12 million over budget. Enter Donald J. Trump. Then just 40 years old, Trump set his sights on Woolman, literally. Looking down from his swanky Fifth Avenue Eyrie in Trump Tower, the Donald could see the dilapidated rink and was disgusted with the view. Never short of opinions or shy about voicing them, in June 1986, Trump vowed to take the renovation project over from the city, bring it in under budget, and have the rink open by Christmas. Mayor Ed Koch reluctantly capitulated, and Trump delivered. By November, Woolman Rink was up and running and nearly $1 million under budget.
I give Ed Koch and Commissioner Henry Stern tremendous credit for having the courage to say, Donald, go and do it. And it would have been probably a lot better for them if I didn't do it.
We just saw the modest Donald Trump. But Donald Trump deserves an enormous amount of credit.
Trump sometimes now cites the Woolman Rink renovation in the context of his presidential ambitions. So when we met him today at the landmark in question, I started out by asking Trump to give us a guided tour down memory lane. So let's go back to the summer of 1986. Your office, not that far from here. You looked down and saw what? And why did you then decide to get involved in this project?
I saw for years a mess. I saw a place that was under construction, which is the Woolman Rink, and it was under construction for many years, 8 to be exact. And I said, what's going on? We're talking about a slab of concrete. Now, it's actually much more complicated than that, to be honest with you. But still, it's a very large slab of concrete. And after a number of years, I called the mayor. I said, what's going on? And nobody was ever working. They were having a lunch break all day long. Hundreds of people, they'd all be sitting. And it's been a great experiment. I mean, you may want to continue with your question, but it's been certainly a great experiment.
What was in it for you?
Well, I just wanted to get it done. I had a young daughter, at that time young and still young, Ivanka. And she said, Dad, I'd love to go ice skating. But that rink is never going to open. And, you know, we took in 7 to 8 years closed, 7 seasons and 8 years total. And I said, let me look into it. So I looked down, and I'd see it right from Trump Tower. And then I'd pass it, and I'd look at the men. I know a lot of the men, because the construction business I know. And I'd see a lot of the workers, and they'd wave to me, hi, Mr. Trump. I said, what's wrong here, fellas? He said, nobody wants us to work. Nobody cares. And I went to see Koch, Ed Koch, who was the mayor at the time. And I said, listen, I will do this job, and I'll get it done fast. It was a huge embarrassment for the city, because you know what was happening. It was a front-page story. It was the biggest story because you couldn't get it was 8 years to open an ice skating rink. And I went to Ed Koch. I said, let me do it. If I don't do it for under $2 million and do it fast, I'll pay for it. And he was not 100%, you know, he was embarrassed by the whole situation. But I took it over. I got it done in 4 months. But people use this as an example of what can be done private enterprise.
Right. So is this a story about the ineffectiveness of the public sector and the effectiveness of the private sector, or does this say something special about your capacity to get things done?
Well, I do have a great capacity to get things done, but it also has to do with the private sector. I mean, I don't know if anybody could have beaten my record. As an example, the old post office under construction right now on Pennsylvania Avenue, right between Congress, the White House. Boom. The most beautiful building. It is incredible. I'm under budget, ahead of schedule, which is what we should be. And we're going to open, we were supposed to open in 17. We're now going to open probably in September of 16, which is very good timing, actually, right on Pennsylvania Avenue. So I get things done. But I mean, another one that I'm very proud of, Ferry Point. They had a big development in the Bronx that was a disaster, under construction probably for 30 years. Nobody really knows when it started. It was so long ago. And I got it done in a year. And it's open now and a very successful job.
So people who say Trump's got no government experience, he can't possibly be president, because that's not what being president's about. This was a government problem. The city couldn't get this thing built. So what are examples of things now that aren't getting done that you think you could bring the same skills to if you were president, just the way you got this thing built?
I'll give you one example. Wars. Wars aren't getting done. It's the same thing. I mean, you look at ISIS, you look at what's going on with what we're doing, then we send 50 people over there, our 50 best. But why would anybody say that we're sending? Why does the president have to say we're sending 50 people? Those people are in great danger now because we're saying that. Why wouldn't he send them if he's got to send them? First of all, either win or don't win or get out. But he sends 50 people over there. He then makes a public announcement to the world that 50 people, well, those men and women right now they're being hunted. They're looking for those men. Why does he have to say that he's sending them over? Do you know how dangerous that is?
Your critics would say you've just compared building an ice skating rink to stopping wars, and that is
all the
dangerous.
same.
Explain
Can I tell you why? Because it has to do with efficiency. It has to do with common sense. It has to do with knowledge. Look, I wrote a book in the year 2000, and I talked about Osama bin Laden because I watched this guy talking. You know, he was a terrorist, well known. And I wrote about him in a book. And Joe Scarborough said, hey, when was that book written? It was in 2000. It was before the World Trade Center came down. And he goes, whoa, that's amazing. Look, you know, I have a knack for things, and I know what I'm doing. And this country is so far behind in every way, in trade, in military. We are so far. I watched the other day General Oriano. He's leaving. He said, we are the least prepared. He was talking about Army. But he said, we are the least prepared that we've ever been. I think he said, ever been in the history of the country. Now, he might have said since the Second World War, but I think it was essentially ever. We can't have that.
So let's ask the question this way, a slightly different way. Is the argument you're making that the skill set required to be president of the United States is the same as the skill set required to be CEO?
I'm not.
And if they're not the same, what are the differences?
Okay, they're not the same, but I am better than those people. I will do a better job. I'll do a better job with the military. I'll do a better job with jobs. I know my competition. I understand life. I understand competition.
But again,
I've done. See these buildings over there? I've built numerous of them, and they're successful.
But what are the differences, though? What's the difference? But there's skills that are required to be a successful CEO, skills that are required to be a successful president. You said they're different. So what are the differences? What's the way in which you'd have to change your game if you were president?
To be a CEO, and depending on companies and everything else, because every company is different, okay? But to be a CEO, you have to be boom and get it done. To be a president, I think you have to be boom and get it done, but I also think you have to have heart. We have a lot of people that need help. We have a lot of people in this country that are not making it, and they're in trouble. And I think I always say, you know, I'm a conservative with heart, because people think conservatives don't have heart. You know, they hear about Obamacare, and people want to knock the hell out of Obamacare, and they should, because it's horrible. And by the way, as I told you at our last meeting, actually quite a while ago, watch the premiums. Well, you've seen what's happened. The premiums are going through the roof. It's not working. It's not going to work, and it's going to collapse in 17 unless something major is done in Congress, and they shouldn't do it. They should come up with a much better plan. But I like to say you need great abilities, but you also have to have big, beautiful heart.
Oftentimes when people are asked about, are you ready to be president, someone will say, well, nobody's ever really ready. No one can step in until you're in the job. Is that how you feel about it, or do you feel like because of accomplishments like this from day one, you could walk in and do it?
Well, this isn't one of my big things, but this is
the symbolism of it.
You know what this shows? This shows simplicity. Now, it wasn't that simple. They were using Freon. They should have used brine. They were using, and I tell the story where they had their engineer for making ice was located in Miami. Immediately I said, why is an engineer for an ice skating rink in Miami? And it wasn't working, and they had all these copper pipes that every night they'd lay them and they'd be stolen. They'd lay them, they lost a fortune. What happened, I went to the Montreal Canadiens. A friend of mine works for the Montreal Canadiens, the ice hockey team in Canada. And I said, do me a favor, who do I speak to about making ice? And he gave me the people that the Montreal Canadiens use. He came down, he said, oh, you're using the wrong stuff. I immediately switched it, and we had a great success.
Again, just nice. Are you ready to be president from day one? No learning curve, step in and do it.
Hey, look, Obama had no experience, okay? I've always said talent is more important than experience. But I just don't think Obama our president is a talented person. And he should never have been in this position. And he had no experience, and it's not his thing. I mean, you have Democrats, you have congressmen that have hardly even seen him and hardly ever met him. He doesn't work the system. That's why he signs executive orders all the time, because he can't get his own people to go along. But when it came to the war, as an example, two examples, should never have been in Iraq, and you know that I said a long time ago in 2003, 2004, don't do it, you're going to break up the balance of the Middle East, and boy, has that happened. And you know, it gave us ISIS, it gave us nothing but problems, all right? But then when we left, he shouldn't have left the way he did. But when he announced a date for leaving, the enemy said, and I immediately said, this is a disaster. He announced a specific date. We will be out by such and such a date. So the enemy says, you know, what we're going to do is we're going to go back and we're going to sort of just take it easy for a little while. And that's what happened. But even yesterday, when he announced 50 of our great people are going over to Syria, 50. Why does he have to announce it? Everyone now is looking for those 50 people. I know it's politically made. I don't even think it came out politically good, because people said, what do you mean 50? What can 50 people do? So I don't even think it was good for him politically. But you have to be quiet. You know, General Patton didn't go and talk about, I'm sending 50 men here, I'm sending 200 men here. He did the job. He knocked them out. General Douglas MacArthur, you go back and look, these were not talkers. So I think it's, and I really mean this strongly, I think it was a horrible thing that he announced that 50 people are going over to Syria.
Thank you, Mr. Trump. We're going to be back with more Donald Trump, some news a day, right after this. And now, the stirring conclusion of our conversation with Donald Trump in Central Park, where we started out asking him about his rival on the rise, Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio is now kind of a candidate on the rise. Some people are saying he's like Barack Obama. He actually compared you to Barack Obama at one point and said he said that, like Barack Obama, you're not dignified or worthy of the office that you're seeking. He said we have a president now with no class. I'm just wondering what you think the comparison.
Oh, was he the one that said that?
What do you think of the comparison on issues and leadership?
I think he's highly overrated. I think he's an overrated person. I don't think he's going to make it. I noticed that the press, in fact, I was watching this morning one of the shows, and they were talking about Marco Rubio. I mean, he's nowhere in the polls. I don't think, personally, I don't think he's going to make it. You know, I called him a lightweight. I said at one point he was a lightweight. And I don't mean to be insulting, but I do describe people somehow well. I think Marco...
You've been critical on immigration, but are there other issues?
Well, no, he's very critical. I'm very critical.
Yeah.
He was a member of the Gang of Eight, which basically wanted to have everybody come in and take over our country. All of a sudden, he went down in the polls, and he immediately changed and got out. He is totally driven by what the public thinks. No, I think he's not... Look, Bush got creamed in the debate, but he shouldn't have. If I were the messenger, because the message is great, his delivery was poor, but the message is great. He doesn't show up. Marco doesn't show up to votes. He doesn't do things that you're supposed to do. He got elected senator, and you know the same thing happened to him in the Florida Senate, if you look. And I know a lot about Florida. I'm there. You saw the poll that came out today where I'm beating him and Bush by a lot and Carson by a lot in Florida. I know Florida better than they know Florida. So what happens is...
But you started him as a state legislator.
No, he was in the Senate, and he tried to get the top position or whatever. Tried to get the top. A friend of mine told me, who's there with him. They fought, they got the top position. 2 minutes after he had the top position, he was looking to run for Senate. Then he runs for Senate. Now he wants to be president. I would say, you know, maybe I'm the last person to say this. Relax. Take it easy. Take it easy. I think he's a highly overrated person. I've called him a lightweight. I think he's a lightweight. I hope I'm wrong about that.
Does he have a chance
but we
to be the
can't
nominee?
have... I don't think he has... Look, you know why he has a chance? Because guys like you, and I'm not specifically referring to you, you a little bit, to be honest. You a little bit. But I watched somebody on Joe's show this morning. He's fawning off him. He says how handsome he is, how good. I don't know. I think I'm better looking than he is. Am I better looking than him? So no, but they're talking about he's so handsome. He's so wonderful. And Joe goes, look where he is. He's way down here. He's probably a nice person. Another thing I didn't like about him, and I don't like about him, he should have been more loyal to Bush. I was told, I didn't know him at all, I was told that he would never run because Bush was his mentor. Bush really helped him. Bush did things that, well, I said, all right, good, because I'm a very loyal person. I'm an extremely loyal person, to a fault, frankly. But, and maybe I'd rather have it that way than the other way. He was very, very disloyal to Bush. I don't like that.
Let me ask you about the debate about debates. What is it you're looking for in a moderator or a set of moderators as we go forward? What are your criteria for
John, I don't care that much, honestly. I did well in the debates, all three of them. This last one, even CNBC had me winning. Did you see that? CNBC had me winning the debate. I do think this. A debate should not be 3 hours like CNN. CNN did that for money. I can stand up for 24 hours in debate. But the audiences are going to want to watch it. Gone with the Wind is 3 hours, okay? Who's going to want to watch these guys, including me, for 3 hours? There are certain things we should get. Right. The room was probably 100 degrees, the one room. Was 100 degrees out. All these things are very important things for a debate. It's unfair. Now, speaking of Rubio, he's the one that sweats the most. He's the youngest, but I have never seen any human being sweat like that.
But your problem isn't liberal bias. A lot of your colleagues seem to feel as though these debates have been liberally biased.
Look, I thought the questions were very unfair, but they were unfair, in my opinion, from Fox, and they were a little bit unfair from CNN, and most of the unfairness was directed at me, so I'm the one that should be complaining.
So when Senator Cruz says that the only moderators who voted in a Republican primary should be allowed to be in these debates, you agree with that or you disagree?
I don't think it's a bad idea, but I can live either way. Look, I had a representative there. I don't care that much. I think, frankly, I'd go a step further. I'm more of an economic person. The networks are making a fortune with the debates. The truth is, we should be like a basketball player. We should go on strike and say we want money for wounded warriors, or we want money for a great charity, the veterans. I'd love to give, because CNN made a fortune, an absolute fortune. CNN had a 2-hour debate 2 days before the debate, and nobody told anybody. They decided to make it 3, only for one reason, because they sold out all their advertising. They were getting $4,000 for a 30-second ad. They got $250,000. Same thing with CNBC. I called up CNBC when they went from 2 hours to 3, and they went to 3. So Harwood lied. You know, Harwood lied when he said that's not true. He totally told a lie, a dirty lie. It was in all the papers that it was going to be a 3-hour debate. Does that bother you? That's New York. That's called Welcome to New York.
We're outside.
It's both a beautiful and an unattractive sound, because it means trouble. Yeah. But that's New York. So Harwood lied when he talked about the debate, and he lied bigly. I called up through my people and myself, and within about 3 minutes I got it down. I was like one of the easy negotiations of all time. More important than moderators or anything else, they're going to have big audiences. Let the money go to charity.
We call this the Rink the Trump bill. Thank you for welcoming us.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Jim.
Actually, I want to give you one of these.
Okay, that's fine.
All right, our thanks again to Donald Trump and to his giant block of ice. Up next, your 24-hour campaign forecast and what it might mean for your morning commute. Our political meteorology team is standing by. We'll be right back.
Another busy day out there tomorrow in election land. Let's go live to our 24-hour campaign forecast center. Our chief political meteorologist, Alex Trowbridge, is standing by. Alex, how you feeling today?
Well, Mark, I'm a little blue. Bluegrass, that is, because tomorrow voters in Kentucky will decide who fills an open governor seat. Watch this color right here. It could turn from blue to red for the first time since 2007. And take a look at this here in Coralville, Iowa. Around 4 p.m., we're expecting heavy Clinton impact there. Heavy impact. Could extend to Grinnell around 7:45 p.m. Eastern. Meanwhile, on the East Coast, we have some low energy on the move. Jeb Bush going from South Carolina in the morning to Raymond and Wolfboro, New Hampshire in the evening. Finally, for our friends here in New York City, Marco Rubio. He'll be here at lunchtime to break bread and raise dough. That's it for me, guys. Remember, like an umbrella or Mike Bender on the Jeb Bush campaign, we have got you covered. Back to you.
Thanks, Alex. Well, he's no Sam champion, but he's pretty good.
I love that guy.
Yeah. All right, when we come back, your nightly homework assignment, direct from BloombergPolitics.com.
We are on the tube twice a day, now and forevermore, for the full hour at 5 and 8 p.m. We are live 24/7 on BloombergPolitics.com. When you visit the site, make sure you check out our campaign tracker for the latest 2016 updates, along with the terrific story by our own Jen Epstein on the Hillary Clinton-Bernie Sanders duel in New Hampshire.
On tomorrow's program, we're going to have more of my talk with Ted Cruz from Iowa. We talked all about his new tax plan. It's a flat tax plan, and it's getting a lot of attention.
You know who else is on the show tomorrow, I believe?
Who else?
I believe Stan Greenberg might be with us tomorrow.
Former big Democratic pollster, worked for the Clintons.
Got an important book coming out about the new America and the new politics of the new America. I think I'm looking forward to that conversation, too.
Lots of politics tomorrow, more on the debates, more on Marco Rubio, who will be here in New York City, and Donald Trump will be on Good Morning America. Until tomorrow, we'll see you then, 60 minutes every night. Sayonara.